This is part 3 of the controversial man, who of course is Jesus Christ. But before I begin, I want to talk about the fact that in my last video, it appeared that I was looking in different places. And that was done deliberately. It was done deliberately because when I would do public speaking engagements, one of the most important part of my talk would be for me to engage people. If I didn't look at different people, they thought for a moment that they were excluded from my talk. With that being said, it becomes a habit when you do a talk to look around at your audience. I film this before a live audience. Therefore, it's very natural for me to look in different places. However, if you're on the other side of the camera when I'm doing this video, you would say, well, she's not looking directly into the video or the camera, therefore there's a disconnect. Most likely, being on the other side of the camera, you would think that. So I'm going to stay focused, as my people say, look into the lens, and then you could talk to everybody else later. It's amazing how important it is to engage people you are speaking with. With that being said, if a person on the other side of the video who knew me and my speaking engagements would understand that if I didn't look at them, that again, I wasn't talking directly to them, or that if I was looking to the left or to the right, they would ask me questions such as, are you looking at angels, or was there phenomena happening? And I would tell them that no, it was just a habit of looking around the room at everyone and not necessarily looking at angels. Phenomena had always followed me when I did speaking engagements, so it's not that odd of a question for someone to ask me. When Jesus spoke, if he didn't look at different people, they too would feel as though they weren't included in what he was saying. It was so very important that he would take the moment, or that particular moment, and look at different faces in his assembly. He could only do so much, however, because the crowds were tremendous. And the same with doing a speaking engagement in a church or parish or a hall or in a center where everyone wants you to look at them. And they would come back and say, I know that talk was just for me. Human beings need that connection. If they don't have it, they get distracted. So the fact that people ask me, was there phenomena happening, or what was the reason why I was looking around? My answer would be exactly that. I had a live audience and habit of looking at other people. However, it doesn't mean that I am not looking at you also. Jesus would speak to crowds of people, and afterwards people would run over to him and want his full attention, full undivided attention, because they believed in him. They liked what he said. They knew that he was talking directly to them. So often people would say, that was meant for me, Lord. So in taking a look at that very fragile veneer of humanity that we all have at one point or another, we understand then that when it comes to God and God's love for us, how important it is for that soul to feel as though God is seeing them or it. So I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you when I talk about Jesus, so that you have a connection, so that you understand that even if you don't totally understand with your ears or your mind, that your soul will actually absorb the words. One time I did a talk, and I asked the people later several questions relating to the talk that I had just done, and they looked at me and I got thumbs up from everybody, and I said, well, give me a little bit of what you remember, what touched your heart the most, and they smiled. And I said, okay, it doesn't necessarily mean you weren't paying attention or that you didn't understand what I was saying. What it shows me is that we probably bypassed your ears and went directly to your heart, which that's what transcendentalism is. Oftentimes what I would do too, or what I became known for, is having the Blessed Sacrament with me in churches or parishes, wherever I would go. Most Catholics don't like that. They believe the Blessed Sacrament should stay in the church. Well, Jesus went among the people. Jesus was the healer. Jesus was the speaker. Jesus was the one they wanted to hear when he spoke. And I always believed, and in the Eastern religion, we believe that if you didn't see Jesus in the church, would you not look at him or talk with him or try to get his attention? Because when he spoke to people in crowds, to get his attention, they would yell out, Jesus, Jesus of Nazareth, look at me. So if he was only in a church where he is protected, you would think, when he was outside the church, would you not give him the same attention? On another note, too often had I done speaking engagements in churches where people were known to walk away and either chew gum with the host, stick the host under the pew, throw the host away they didn't like the taste. I witnessed this. My large group of people witnessed these things. So having him in the Blessed Sacrament protected so that he could be out among his people, it was a very important factor in my talks. We wanted Jesus there. I believed most people didn't even have the opportunity to reach out to Jesus if not for being in the Blessed Sacrament in places that I spoke. Not too many people had done perpetual adoration. Not too many people even understood what the Blessed Sacrament was. So I made him, Jesus, accessible. I'll bring him out with his people, protected in a monstrance, with a priest, Eucharistic minister, whoever at the time, as protection, so that people could kiss him, could reach out to him, could talk to him. That posed a very controversial issue, whereas receiving communion and walking away without a guard to protect that very vulnerable presence of Jesus was ignored. Anyway, with the Blessed Sacrament, carried in procession, showed people that we, especially myself, love Jesus so much, I wanted to give people that opportunity to spend time in his presence. The opportunity to empty their heart to him. To do what he had done for people 2,000 years ago by spending time with them in large groups. That he could look at each person individually and bless them. And in turn, they could praise him. We think of Palm Sunday when he came as king and people put their cloaks down and waved palms because of who Jesus was and is. Today, we isolate Jesus from his people. And that is one reason why people cannot relate to Jesus in that state. Jesus has three natures: his divinity, his humanity, and in a sacramental state. But if you keep the presence of Jesus away from people, they will never get to know him. In saying that, you have to understand that's what Jesus meant when he said you don't light a lamp and then hide it under a bushel basket, but rather you put it on a lampstand so that it sheds light so all could see. It was always my reasoning to bring Jesus out for all to see and not hide him and keep him away from people who may never get to see him in his sacramental state, which is our only way of looking at God, our only opportunity. People have to learn that he made himself in this, to be put into this vulnerable state in order that we can see God. It's not as simple. It's actually Jesus. And as you go on to understand the Ishan religion, you'll understand also that it's not just Jesus, but being married is one with his wife. Because you can't separate what God put together. This is important in the Ishan religion. This is what we believe. Jesus didn't stay in the synagogue and teach from reading scrolls. Jesus fulfilled what the scrolls said and was out among the people. He made himself public so that all could gaze upon this person of God, that they could relate to him, and he could offset the prophecy that they will have ears to hear and eyes to see. The prophecy was they will have ears to hear but will not hear, eyes to see but will not see. So in going out, he offset what was prophesied, that they will be able to now, because of him, see and hear. And then there's a choice. Will they accept or will they deny? Everyone at the time of Jesus did not always accept Jesus and his teachings or the way he taught. 2019, we're basing our belief on what we've been told and what we've been taught. So it's not surprising that even in certain teachings, people will not want to move on, will not want to hear or accept anything other than what they were taught before. That's understandable. If that's your faith, that's great. But Jesus was always controversial. Jesus is more controversial, Ishans believe today, than ever. Because now, in 2019, more things, more truths are being revealed, and there's a fear out there. There's a fear. Because things that were taught for 2,000 years may not have been the whole truth. So once again, Jesus is very controversial, but what do you do when Jesus sends a helper that he wishes to be there to bring him souls? An enlightened person listens. An enlightened person does not want to miss truth. They don't shut down. They don't lock themselves up. They don't allow themselves to be blindly led. But enlightened means you open your eyes, your ears, your mind, your heart to perhaps another pathway to Jesus, or a pathway to God that you never experienced before. Not that you haven't thought about it, not that you haven't wished for it, but maybe we're just afraid to. Today, you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to understand more about the person, that controversial person of Christ. You have an opportunity today to become enlightened. You're not being tricked. This is not heresy. This is giving you a path that perhaps it was already in your soul. In any event, this is and always will be the story of a controversial man and one who loves him. Thank you.